they operate in states, in northern states, that are in a deregulated market. What that means is that people like you and I in those states, in Maryland, Massachusetts, New Jersey, they get to choose who their power provider is. We don't get to choose. If you are in a certain territory, that's who your utility supplier is. So in the northern states, where people can choose who their power utility is, Dominion has entered the program. They see that they can make a ton of money, and so they're buying the rights to those solar and wind farms for those markets, for the northern markets, not for us. But you're right on the hydropower piece. Every year they have to submit a compliance report to the State Corporation Commission as to how they're meeting the RPS goals. And if you look at their compliance report for 2013, the only in-state generated power that they use to apply to that is hydro and biomass. But it's like 90% of the power is actually out-of-state RECs that they purchase, and it's all hydro. There's no solar and there's no wind that they apply. They're not serious.
I just want to point out that with regard to the EPA hearing that she mentioned on July 29th, we are going to have vans coming from Richmond, and that sheet that she has a contact. If you sign up on there, or just let us know, we'll try and get you on a van. So trying to get as many people up there to testify and for a rally that day, the 29th. So please come on your own, or if you'd like to carpool or come in a van, please see me or Karina and respond to that alert. We'll try and get you up there.
Yes, there are ways to get you up to DC. We highly encourage it. Are there any other questions?
One more comment. You were talking about the 4 parts of their EPA's program, and like conservation being one of them. Is there anybody that we have in the legislature this year sponsoring any legislation for, making new, like apartment buildings and commercial buildings, manufacturing buildings, more energy efficient? What brings us to mind, as I was talking to my son this weekend, and he works for this company that has a very old building. He says, for them to be efficient, they'd have to tear it down and install a light. And if we don't, get legislation passed to make this happen, it's not going to happen. And the other thing is, with like renewables, I have solar, and I got into it a number of years ago when there were credits and you were getting about $2,000 per kilowatt you were putting out, and there's nothing out there right now like that. Not the state's not doing anything. That all came through the state, from the federal government. So what can we do to push those things also?
Yeah, so the General Assembly is over for this year, but we have already begun planning for 2015. The environmental community has a meeting with the solar industry later this week to start hashing out our top priorities for 2015. So we've been working really well with them for the last year and a half on legislation that both solar industry and the environmental community can support. With energy efficiency, there's the Virginia Energy Efficiency Council. They've been around for a few years, but they haven't really focused much on policy. I don't know if they're going to dip their toe in that water or not. It would be nice to see some energy efficiency folks start wading in as well. But you're absolutely right. I think state policy is definitely something that's needed. But we also see the EPA Clean Power Plan as an opportunity as well. It's really an opportunity, if it's done right, to really push for more renewables in Virginia. So that, again, it's so important that we make sure that when our state does implement a plan, that it's heavy focus on energy efficiency, heavy focus on renewables, and not talking about nuclear and not talking about natural gas. And that's up to all of us. The DME hearings that I mentioned that happened a couple weeks ago, members of our community, people that care about climate change and sea level rise and admit that it's happening and care that it's happening, we outnumbered the opposition. That we, I think only the Southwest Virginia one was actually one where we heard opposition. I was at the Fredericksburg one. There was only one person that spoke in opposition, and it wasn't even, too bad of a statement. Everyone else was pro-removal, and it was just hammered on that is so important, and that's what we need to do again at the DEQ meeting, especially the one here in Richmond on August 7th.
I had heard or read somewhere about the problem was the wind energy, is that it kills so many birds, and I'm kind of concerned. I'm all for the wind energy, but is there anything that we could do to stop them from killing the birds, or some steps that we could take or fix something? Because I'd be kind of concerned about, some kind of bird might be coming extinct because of it or something, and killing so many birds being killed, or what can we do,
Yeah, so mainly the issue is with land-based turbines, not offshore wind. Many bird studies have been done and show that birds actually hug the coast when they migrate, and so when we're talking about the wind energy area where Dominion won the auction, it's 23 miles offshore, so we won't be seeing that type of a problem. But in terms of land-based wind, in the early 70s when California was putting up a lot of turbines, they weren't siting them properly. They were just saying, oh, this looks like a great place to put up a turbine, let's throw this farm up here. And it was killing raptors and birds of prey. But there's so much that has happened in the last 30, 40 years, better technology, better siting. People know that they really need to pay attention to these kinds of things. I mean, wildlife is important. And initially in the 70s, they had, instead of it being a tall monopole, it was on a three-pole structure. The birds were perching on it. And so what was happening is that the birds would sit on the structure, and then when they'd go to take off, that's when a fatality would occur. It's not to say that they don't still happen, because they do, but it's much better than it was. And you also have to put it in perspective. There's been a graph. For every 10,000 bird deaths, one happens from a turbine, 500 happen from buildings and windows, and 400 happen from cats. So if you wanna regulate turbines, then we need to regulate buildings, windows, and cats too.
I'm familiar with the Koch brothers and Alec, but could you explain what Donors Trust is?
Donors Trust?
Donors Trust?
I've actually never heard of that one.
Did Glenn
I think you just did.
Oh, okay, because it's on this handout.
Oh, yeah, Kareem's not here.
It's tied in there somewhere, but I cannot remember.
Sorry.
I tend to agree with a lot of this, Chelsea, but I look at the path to energy future, and if all of that came to pass, it's not going to come to pass in my lifetime, but if it does, we're still got a major problem. If you get 12% by 2020 and 16% by 2030, we've still got a problem. And everybody, Mike Tidwell, you folks here tonight, everybody's ducking the nuclear question. Nuclear has got problems. The Lord knows that, with the spent plutonium and all of that. No question about it. But yet, it doesn't put any greenhouse gas up there. And if you pulled the plug on Surrey and Lake Anna, we would really be in trouble in this state. That's a significant section of the power. The pie chart he used up there calls that other. That's more than other. That's a fairly big deal. It's almost, I think it's somewhere around 40%. Now, where is that what's going to happen with that? I personally think we ought to have some more. They ought to put in a few more at Surrey and at Lake Anna. It's got a problem. Heating water, the cooling water is a problem. It's got a problem with spent plutonium, all of that. But this isn't going to get it done. And coal has got to go. There's no question in my mind about that. But the march is on with natural gas. I mean, natural gas is coming out of Bakken and Permian basins and all that. They figured out how to do the fracking with the horizontal drilling now, and that's where the stuff's coming from. So.
Right, I mean, the war on coal is definitely coming from the natural gas industry, and that's why I think it's a big concern. But to your point with nuclear, no one is advocating for Surrey or North Carolina to be shut down. They're going to run until their permits run out. But the problem is right now is that Dominion is saying they're going to do one or the other. They're going to do North Carolina 3, or they're going to do the offshore wind farm. And in my mind, it has to be the offshore wind farm. Offshore wind is cheaper than nuclear.
Can I speak to that?
Sure, just give me one second.
Southern Company.
Can I finish what I'm saying?
Okay, but I want to tell you why nuclear is not feasible.
That's fine, but let me just finish my thought. So, with offshore wind, Dominion has said publicly that they will choose between North Carolina 3 or they will choose offshore wind. They can't do both. They've spent a ton of money on nuclear, on North Carolina 3. They haven't spent that much money on offshore wind yet, but they've won the auction. And the federal government has said that they will take the wind energy area back away from them if they don't do anything with it. There is a concern that they're just holding on to it because they want to continue to be a monopoly and they don't want to see anyone else build it. I want to see offshore wind in my future, and that's what I'm pulling for. So if Dominion is saying it's one or the other, it has to be offshore wind.
Okay, the only nuclear plant that's been being built and has been built since probably the last 30 years is being built by Southern Company. It's either in Georgia or
It's in
Alabama.
Georgia. Mm-hmm.
And the only reason it was being built is because it was highly subsidized by the federal government, as all other ones were built. And that's the only one being built, period. So if the government doesn't subsidize it, it isn't going to happen. But I'm talking about the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
So that's reality of it. And if they, will spend the money on, in other words, the Congress we get rid of some of them, on renewables that they're spending on coal with their subsidies and nuclear, because nuclear was subsidized, and hadn't been subsidized, it wouldn't be where it is today.
Any other questions?
Well, I just have a statement. Actually, I've been following the nuclear issue quite a bit, and including the uranium mining that we obviously kept our ban on uranium mining. Dominion got $400 million last year for the paperwork they've done for North Carolina Unit 3. And prior to that, $500 million from the Department of Energy. So we've basically spent $900 million on North Carolina 3, and nothing's really been done. Not that I'm complaining, because it's a seismic zone. So I think it's a really bad place to put another nuclear power plant. On top of that, the nuclear waste that we're creating, there is no place to store it. So we'll be stuck with it forever. So as it goes for Surrey, the land is sinking and the tides are rising. So that's going to be a problem.
It's
So
a problem.
nuclear, if we go forward with nuclear, we're talking about $10, $15 billion. And then the legacy of nuclear waste and the dilemmas that come with it. And the only time nuclear, as they're claiming, is green and clean is when it's essentially right when it's fissioning and it's putting off steam. But you have the whole front end of uranium mining, milling, processing, turning it into rods, and then the extreme back end. So it's extremely carbon intensive, only that moment that it's not. So as a Virginian, I want clean energy, and I don't want to leave a legacy of all this nuclear waste that we'll be stuck with, and in a seismic zone. I mean, this is crazy, because we have no known faults, active faults supposedly, but we've had 3 earthquakes at 3 different faults. And I just got off a meeting with the NRC in Dominion, and the seismologist was refuting what Dominion was saying, because they're saying, no, that's not just water, those are faults.